Your silence answered before you did. I missed the explanation, not you. There was a time when a late reply never really hurt. Because even if it took hours, there would always be a reason waiting on the other side. Sorry, I was busy. Meeting ran late. Just got home. Nothing special. Nothing romantic. Just small explanations. Tiny bridges between the waiting and the answer. And somehow, those bridges mattered more than I realized. Now the messages still get replies. The words are still there. The conversation technically still exists. But something feels missing. The strange part is that I didn't notice it immediately. At first, I thought maybe work was getting harder. Maybe life was heavier. Maybe people change. Maybe this was what adulthood looked like. So I kept understanding. Kept making excuses in my head before anyone asked me to. But one night I caught myself doing something stupid. I sent a message. Put my phone face down. Picked it up 3 minutes later. Then 5. Then 10. Then I opened the chat even though there was no notification. Just to check. As if somehow the message would arrive faster if I looked at it. I laughed at myself. Then did it again. Hours later, a reply finally came. Short. Normal. Not rude. Just enough to answer what I asked. And that should have been fine. But my eyes stayed on the screen longer than usual. Because I realized there was no explanation anymore. No sorry. No, I was busy. No, just saw this. Nothing. Just the answer. And for some reason, that hurt more than being left on read. Because when people explain their absence, they're still acknowledging your wait. They're saying, I know you were there. I know time passed. I know my silence reached you. When the explanation disappears, the silence starts feeling invisible. Like the waiting belonged only to you. I think that's what changed. Not the reply speed. Not the number of messages. The awareness. The consideration. The feeling that someone knew you were on the other side of the screen. There are moments nobody talks about. Like typing a reply, deleting half of it, then sending something shorter because the conversation doesn't feel safe enough for the longer version anymore. Or opening a chat to tell someone about a random thing that happened during your day. A dog sleeping in front of a convenience store. The coffee machine breaking again. The song playing in a taxi. Then closing the chat without sending anything because you suddenly feel like you're interrupting. Those moments don't happen overnight. They happen little by little. One delayed reply. Then another. Then the explanations disappear. Then the stories disappear. Then eventually the person disappears emotionally long before they leave physically. The hardest part is that nobody can point to a specific day. No big fight. No dramatic goodbye. No betrayal. Just a slow adjustment. Like your heart quietly learning new expectations. I remember sitting in bed one evening with my room lights off. Only the phone screen lighting up my face. The message had been delivered hours ago. I told myself I wasn't waiting. Then I noticed I hadn't started the movie I wanted to watch. I hadn't taken a shower. I hadn't gone to sleep. I was just scrolling through random videos I wasn't actually watching. Doing that thing everyone does when they're secretly expecting a notification. And suddenly I felt embarrassed. Not because I was waiting, but because I finally understood I was waiting alone. The reply came eventually. It always did. That's what made it confusing. If the replies had stopped completely, maybe acceptance would have been easier. But they didn't. They arrived just often enough to keep the conversation alive. Just not enough to make it feel warm. And warmth is difficult to explain. You can have words without warmth. Replies without presence. Conversations without connection. Sometimes people don't leave. They simply stop arriving. I think that's why the missing I'm busy hurts so much. It wasn't about the excuse itself. It was about what the excuse represented. A person who still cared whether you understood. A person who still noticed the gap between messages. A person who didn't want their silence to sit heavily on you. When that disappears, you start learning things nobody says directly. You learn where you stand. You learn what no longer needs explaining. You learn how relationships cool down. Not through rejection. Not through endings. But through fewer acknowledgements. Fewer details. Fewer little reassurances. Until one day the message arrives hours later and you don't even feel disappointed anymore. You just stare at it. Read it. Lock your phone. And realize the waiting is gone. Not because they came back. But because a part of you finally stopped expecting them to. That might be the saddest moment of all. Not when someone replies late. But when you no longer wonder why.